Welcome back to another episode of Bear Track Outfitters podcast. Been getting a lot of questions about the difference between fall and spring bear hunting. I haven't, so I figured I would just address it, and hopefully we can you can have a better idea of the differences, the similarities, stuff like that. So in my years of guiding and outfitting and even hunting, I generally haven't noticed a big difference between spring and fall bear hunting. In terms of hunting, yes, the bears are generally 150 pounds bigger in the fall, but it's we've killed big bears, 500-600 pounders, 400 pounders, 450 in the spring, so it does happen, but generally, yes, they're bigger in the fall. So the question I get a lot is in terms of hunting bear in the fall, what are some main differences? So I get people email me and they I read a bunch of articles saying this and saying that and advising against this and telling you have to do this, and what I've found is that when it comes to bear baiting, articles on bear baiting are like articles on how to fix your golf swing. Everyone's got the surefire way to fix your slice or to fix this and that. So everyone's got the surefire way to bring bears into the bait and to keep them there. Now, I've addressed bear baiting in the past, so I'm not going to touch too much on it now. But that's just the way it is, right? Don't take every article you read as gospel. Read them in the entirety. Look at a bunch of different ones. Look at them from obviously reputable sources, and look at them from different points of view, because every area is different. The big problem people have is the fear of inconsistency in the fall. I have found that when it comes to later months in the fall, so we run our bear hunts in the fall from the month of September, that last week, the second half of the third week and the last week of September, I have found that the bears tend to be more unpredictable. They're a little more picky with what they eat, because now a lot of their natural food sources are starting to dwindle. They're looking to put those calories on. So when I'm looking at baiting in the fall, I for the first 2.5 weeks, I bait the same way I do in the spring. And I try to get ahead because I know that the bears become less predictable, so I try to get ahead of that. I found one aspect of our bait that they tend to like in those unpredictable weeks, and so I try to get ahead of that. So that's a key factor when you're looking at baiting in the fall. So for us, it's they love the peanut butter. They don't touch the trail mix. They don't touch the gummies really. They go for that peanut butter. So I've had it in the past where we get to that last week and it's like, man, they're not hitting the baits. They're coming, they're sniffing around, and then they leave. They're not sticking around. So I've had it before where I don't put any trail mix in. I just coat the top of the barrel in peanut butter. I'll put a peanut butter on the tree the barrel's tied to. I'll just make it a very peanut butter oriented bait, and then then they're all over it. They'll lick it clean, then they'll stick around. So that's what, I'll put peanut butter in the bottom of a 5-gallon pail and leave it there. Something where they're not just gonna lap it up and leave, where they have to, work a little bit, cover the top in logs. You got to get a little bit creative, because it's straying away from your traditional form of baiting. So you have to keep the same baiting principles in mind, but you have to get a little bit creative. And so what I suggest is, if that's the case, like we know that's the case, it's the last week, let's throw some peanut butter out there. Get ahead of it. Even before they become unpredictable, start upping. So we'll start upping our peanut butter, because we know that unpredictable week is coming. So we'll try to get ahead of it. That way bears don't lose interest and start looking elsewhere for their sustenance. I've heard a lot of guys complain about the berries. Well, what about the berries? In fall, you have to compete with the berries. The berry problem is not a fall specific problem. The berries come out in spring, so you're dealing with it in your spring season already. And on top of that, you're dealing with dandelions, you're dealing with grasses, right? Other natural mast that aren't there in the fall. So the berry problem is not a fall specific problem. To me, that's an easy one to solve. What are they looking for? Why are they going for berries? Well, that sugar content, that sweetness, right? Well, you can very easily compete with that within your bait, candies, gummies, frosting, whatever you want to use. So like I said, the berry problem in fall, it's not a fall specific problem. It's a problem baiting from the get-go, spring and fall. Now, a good berry crop does make baiting more difficult, but it's not impossible, right? So part of baiting for bears is not just, oh, I found a bait that works, they're coming, great, now, and you just kind of leave it. What makes successful bear hunters, the guys that continually kill mature boars and big bears over bait, are the guys that observe the bears. Right? What are they doing? What are they looking for? If you're baiting with, 3 or 4 different things in your little concoction, well, are they favoring one thing over another? Okay, well, that take that, right? Make a mental note. Remember that, okay? And don't just stop there, right? Ask why. Why the peanuts over the pretzels or whatever, right? So part of baiting for bears is being very keen on what they're looking for, what they're interested in, what they're taking the most of, how they react to your bait, and it's far more complex than just throwing bait out and being done with it. So a lot of guys will tell you have to compete with natural mast, and in some cases that's true, berries being one of them. But because they'll try to mirror their bait to whatever the natural mast is in the area. Well, I don't have trail mix growing in my bush, but yet I continuously kill big bears at our camp. So take that with a grain of salt, right? It's not necessarily that you're competing with natural mast. It's simply the fact that you're giving them what they need. Spring has another set of problems, right? The bears come out of hibernation end of April, right? Once they get rid of that plug, now they're starting to look for bait. Now they got the feed bag on. They're starting to put those calories back on that they lost during their torpor, right? Or hibernation, as people call it. They're not actually true hibernators. So it's called torpor, right? Because they'll get up, they'll move around, and they'll usually get up and walk around. I mean, they generally they won't stray usually more than 100 yards from where they're denning, but they will get up and they will move around. So end of April comes, bears come out of their torpor, and they'll get rid of that plug, they'll pass it, and then now they got the feed bag on. So that's when you want your bait to be high calorie, high protein, so they can put those calories on that they lost. The berries, usually early May, mid-May, the berries start coming, the dandelions start coming. So now you have another thing to compete with, right? So which is why I said, don't just bait, oh, this works, and then leave it. Well, you have to, a good outfitter and a good bear baiter, if that's a term, will be constantly, I don't want to say adjusting, but because you have to find a bait that works and stick with it, but you have to be aware and you have to be cognizant of what happens, because a lot of guys will tell me, man, early spring I get bears coming in all the time, and mid-season spring they leave. Well, yeah, because you're not providing all their needs, you're just providing one of them, which is the protein. Well, they also want sweet, they want sugar, they want berries, right? So you have to now Now give them that. So what we do is high peanut butter, high trail mix, a bit of used cooking grease, oats in the beginning of spring when they got that feedback on. And when I notice when I'm in the bush, again, if you're baiting bears, be cognizant of what's happening around you in the woods, not just at your bait site. So I'm always cognizant, I'll be driving down the trail, I'm looking, are berries out yet? Berries out yet? Oh, yep. I'm starting to see wild blueberries, wild strawberries, wild raspberries. Okay, so now I know, and I tell my guys, hey, you notice berries are coming out? And they're always like, yeah. So now we start incorporating gummies in with what we're already using. So we're not really adjusting, we're adding on, because I need to compete with that berries, and I know that now the bears, that's what they're looking for. Another problem that arises in the spring that you don't have in the fall is you get to that first, second week, mid-June-ish, the bears to start, now we have that rut, right? The females are in heat. The boars now kind of shift their attention from putting calories on to breeding. So now it's not so much about the bait, it's where are the sows. So I'm going to put hunters on baits that have the most sows. That's why if you're baiting just on your own, it's nice to have 2-3 different baits, that you can go to. Because when that time comes, if you haven't killed a bear yet, you can adjust. You can, they're not hitting this bait, but they're hitting that one hard. Why? Well, there's 3 sows in that bait. So again, it's just constantly being aware of your surroundings, what's happening in the woods, what the bears are doing, what they're looking for, which will lead to success. So when it comes to hunting between spring and fall, in terms of success rate, I haven't noticed a big difference. I haven't noticed a difference in our success rate because we're constantly making those adjustments. So when you're looking to book with an outfitter, that's something that I think should be taken into consideration. Not all bear outfitters run a fall season. Some do, and some do it right. So I know outfitters that run in the fall that are not successful because they're not making those adjustments, whether it's due to lack of knowledge, laziness, or both. I don't know, but I do know that they're just not consistently killing bears in the fall. Adjustments are part of bear baiting. It's just a part of it. It's what you have to do to be successful. Trying to think if there's anything else in the fall. Weather is usually pretty nice. Weather doesn't really affect bears for the most part that I've found. The cooler temps, a lot of guys think, well, they might be going into hibernation. Weather doesn't determine when a bear goes into hibernation. When a bear goes into hibernation, it could be minus 30 and snowy. If they're still finding calories, they're still out and about. We've had bears out and about seen on our cameras in November. It's for a bear, it's when the calories they exert trying to find food start to exceed the calories they can take in. That's when their body starts telling them, okay, now it's time to go into hibernation. Now it's time to start settling down because I'm just wasting energy at this point. If you're a guy like me who likes to use as much of the bear as he can, fall's a good time because generally you'll have that extra layer of fat, that thicker layer of fat that you can now render down and you can use for cooking, for lubrication, for your tools. You can use for waterproofing leather, whatever you want. So fall is kind of nice because you get to use more of the bear. Spring bears will have fat too, but generally not the way a fall bear will. So when it's a question I get a lot, and it's a good question. You know, guys want to book a bear hunt, and spring's pretty full, and then they go, what about fall? Like how consistent are you in fall? What are your success rates like in fall? And so I just tell them basically what I just said, and I'm happy to share that information. It's not a secret, but it comes down again to adjustments. Can your outfitter, or can you make those adjustments? That will determine your success rate. That'll determine the consistency of your bears coming to your bait. I find it's a misconception that fall bear baiting is harder. Personally, I find it easier than spring, because you have more factors to deal with in spring than you do in the fall. Fall, we don't have dandelions. They're not really going after grasses. Berries are starting to slow down. You don't deal with the rut, stuff like that. So I find it actually easier, which is maybe contrary to what most articles you read will say. But that's just me. I've been doing it long enough. I make the proper adjustments. I know what I'm looking for. So I guess in summary, if I had to give advice, it's the best thing you can do for yourself baiting bears is to just be a student of the game, be cognizant, right? Be aware of what's happening around you. Don't just assume because you have bear bait and then the bears came a few times that now you have it figured out. Because it evolves over time, throughout the season. It evolves, it changes. So like I said, in spring we start with just peanut butter, cooking grease, trail mix, maybe a bit of oats, and then we're being aware of what's happening in the bush. We see berries start coming up, and you look at, okay, now we start incorporating gummies to compete with that sweetness of the berries. Another big thing I look at is, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do this as well, when you get to the bait, there's always scat. There's always scat, right? Hopefully, if you're lucky, you see that beer can scat. You're like, oh, that's a big bear. And you can't wait to look at the camera, this and that. So I look at the scat. What's in it? I'll take a stick and I'll kind of just mush it up and kind of just look around and, okay, there's a lot of berries in here. Maybe I should start incorporating more gummies, or there's a lot of nuts in here, or right. So that'll give you a good indication of what they're looking for. So that just goes in line with being cognizant of what's around you. So don't be scared to bait in fall. It's a lot of fun. It's another chance to hunt bears. The key to your success will be how good are you at adjusting? How good are you at dealing with the obstacles? Oh, the bears aren't coming. Well, why? Or the bears are coming, but they're not really eating the bait as much as they did last week. Because it can change. It can literally change week to week. Okay? Well, what's making them do that? You have to, again, like I said, you have to be a student of the game. You have to understand, okay, what are bears looking for? They're not touching the gummies at all. Okay, so stop using that. Let's add the protein content. Or they're not touching the peanut butter. They're not really touching, but they're eating the crap out of the gummies. Okay, well, it's up, right? It's constantly making these adjustments and fine tuning what you have. Don't necessarily add something new because you're bringing a new scent in. But we've used the same concoction of gummies, trail mix, peanut butter, and oats for years. So it's not necessarily a new scent because they're used to it. I had one other thing I was going to say. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember. Bear baiting it's a bit of a science in that way, where you're tweaking, and but it's not tweaking for the sake of tweaking. It's not tweaking and adjusting for the sake of, oh, I think this will be better, because that I've spoken against in the past, and I am against that. It's adjusting according to what the bear is telling you. It's a small but major difference, right? I'm not just gonna, oh hey, let's add, caramel. Well, do they want caramel? Do they like, have they ever seen caramel, or right? It's adjusting to what the bear is telling you from the scat, from the woods, from what they're taking out of your bait, what they're not taking out of your bait. And also, bears are like humans, right? They don't generally want the same thing all the time, right? Diversity is good. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some clarification as to the difference between baiting between spring and fall. I hope that helps. I hope it leads to success for you in the woods. And so if there's anything that I didn't address, or you want me to address, or questions you have, please down below, and I'll be sure to address it. Until then, stay in the big woods.